Okay, our second attempt. Hope people will be joining us on the new stream. At least this one seems to work, and we seem to have sound. At least we can hear each other, so we should have sound. We'll have to start over again. Abs, can you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, no problem. And apologies, we've spent about 20 minutes trying to get this up, but I've got to jump off in about 30 minutes, but it should be enough to set the scene. My name is Abs. I'm actually from Sydney. I'm 30 years old. I'm a computer systems engineer. And I've been studying theology, religion, and atheism for the past 4 or 5 years, I'd say. And you'll notice from my Twitter, I actually work a lot with trying to expose the illogical nature of atheism. So I'm happy to answer questions, but at the same time, I want to ask some questions as well to make sure that we can actually have a level playing field. Before you kick off with your questions, can I just get a quick intro from you, if you don't mind?
Sure. My name is Peter. I'm from Holland. I'm active on Twitter for, I think, close to 4 years now. Got drawn in by a creationist, Kent Hovind from the US, and I've been debating mostly young Earth creationists on Twitter, and so that's my short history here. I recently started doing live talks like this in at first via Skype, and now via Hangouts, because I had some trouble with the recording software, and I'll be adding video quite soon. So, but for now, this is going to be it.
Cool.
I normally, when I have guests, I offer them a second talk as well. So let me start off by at least offering you a second talk, because we only have half an hour, and you say you debunk the irrationality of atheists. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're happy for that to be the half an hour, we can definitely sort of stick to this and go back and forth a bit. So the tricky thing about atheism is when you try to discuss anything with them, the position is so fluid that it's actually very hard to pin them to a specific position. So I'm actually glad that you're recording this, because as soon as someone sort of comes out and says, I didn't say that, or that's not what I believe, we can actually go back to the specific point where that happened. Before I kick off,
I don't think you have the right definition of atheism, because just by saying this couldn't apply to atheism. Atheism addresses one position only, and that's that we're not convinced by the presented God claims, and that goes for at least for me, for the religions I know. I haven't come across any God claim that met its burden of proof. So
absolutely, but that in itself is a position, and your discussions and your rationale and your beliefs that allow you to draw that, to come to that conclusion, is what's fluid. So it's one position, yes, which is a combination of a lot of statements. So those statements to get to that position is what I'm talking about. They're very fluid. So you'll say statement A, B, C, which leads me to D, but then the second that you realize that C is flimsy, you'll turn around and say, I didn't actually say C. But that's what I'm saying. I'm glad that you're recording this, because
I think you misunderstood, because I only have one position, and that is that I have not yet been presented with a God claim that was backed up with enough evidence for me to believe it. So
okay, let's take a step back here, because
so every single person I talk to has a God claim, and since you're my first Muslim, I can't say that I've ever talked about this before. This will be my first time with a Muslim. So if you have any evidence to back up your claim, I'd be happy to listen to that, and we can see if you meet the
Yep.
burden of
Yep.
proof.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And can we jump into Islam in the second follow-up session as you've just offered? Because the question here is not whether it's Islam or some other God. The question here, as you've suggested, is there's no evidence to suggest there's God. So Islam is actually an irrelevant component to this discussion. So let's take the step back. And I hear what you're saying, that your position is one. But I guess what I'm saying now is, for you to draw that conclusion, for you to arrive at that conclusion, irrespective of what I say, I can make a whole bunch of claims that you refute. That is still not driving you to your decision. Your decision is not because I've said something wrong. Your decision is because you believe you're on the right path.
No.
Do you see the difference between that?
No, I
No.
don't.
So you didn't draw the conclusion that there's no.
I go.
So let's clarify that, because I don't want to start off on the wrong path.
Yeah, okay, I'll clarify. I go where the evidence leads me. If you have sufficient evidence for a God, then I have to accept that God exists. That's my position. So what's your evidence for a God?
So yeah, that's fine. So how do you define evidence? Is it a culmination of circumstantial bits and pieces that lead you to the conclusion that there's no other rational possibility, or is it physically having to see an entity? Because it seems like the atheists
saying that you see no other rational possibility is an argument from ignorance.
No, I didn't say that. I said a whole bunch of.
What we would need is specific evidence that leads to one particular God.
Yep.
And so first we have to define the God that we are going to
we've got to define the evidence.
No, we don't.
First, we've got to define what constitutes evidence. No, because
we start out with defining the God, because if there's no definition of the God, then I have nothing to attribute.
No, see, this is this is the thing, because this discussion will never start unless we can come to common ground rules. Because now, and look, I'm not pinning this on you because you haven't said this, and I'm going to acknowledge that. But when you talk to atheists, the position is that they see no evidence of God.
Okay, then let's skip. Then let's skip the atheists. If I am put on the spot to accept evidence for a God, I first need to have a definition of that God. Otherwise, I cannot.
Let's start with that.
In any way, see how the both are related. I cannot make.
They're absolutely related, but let's start with that. Let's start with that, because, like I said, if we will never come to a common understanding, because your definition of what evidence is and what my definition is are two very different things. And whatever I present to you, you're going to say that's not evidence, because that's a typical atheist position, and vice versa. So I can tell you from now this is going to fall apart. So, but let's kick off with that, since you've gone down this path. So if there is a God, can we agree that he's not in the creation? So if there's something created, it's not inside a statue or inside a tree or inside a rock. It's got to be an external force. Can we agree on that? It must be an external force.
If that is your definition of
it's one aspect. I just want to see where we stop, where we digress. I just want to see that.
Yes,
because if we agree, there's no point in trying to discuss that point.
You're still going from the point that we have to agree on a God, and that's not the case, because
you asked me to define what God is, and I've started with one aspect. I just want to see if this.
I asked you to define what to you your God is.
But that's irrelevant.
No, it's not. It's not, because if you're trying to,
Okay, let's give this a go.
if you're trying to prove a God exists in which you yourself do not believe, then we're wasting time.
Let's I'm going to entertain this, but I'm going to show you where it's going to fall apart, because what you're doing now is making sure that you haven't committed to the position as well. So you can easily.
I can't commit to a position
Okay, I'm going to answer the question.
before I have a clear definition of what I'm looking at.
Okay.
I don't have a God, so
The
I
high
don't
level
have
definition of God that I'm going to give you.
I don't have a God, so I don't have a definition. And I'm not trying to insult you. I'm not trying to
Okay.
to
No.
back you
I know
into
you're
a
not.
corner. I'm just explaining
No, not at all.
how it is.
I'm very confident with my position. Peter,
Okay.
I'm very confident with my position. What I don't want is, I've been in this kind of debates many times, and I know what atheists do. They'll get me to define and show my cards and lay my hand, and they haven't committed to a single position. So therefore, the escape avenue is there. I need you to make a commitment, just like I'm making a commitment, and I'm going to give you the answer as long as you give me an answer as well. I want you to start.
If you give me a definition,
I want you to start.
With what?
Yeah, I will, but I want you to start, because I want you to put your position down on the table. If there is a God, what will that God look like? What would it constitute?
I don't have a clue.
Because
I never spent a single minute thinking about it, because I have seen.
So in other words, no matter what I present is going to be refuted, because it's not going to fit what you.
No. You keep saying that, and that's not the fact. That's not the fact.
Okay. Let's give this a go. Let's give this a go.
If you want to discuss whether or not there is evidence for a car, first you have to define to me what a car is. If you say it's a vehicle mostly made out of metal, it has 4 wheels, it has 1 steering wheel,
absolutely,
from to so many people can fit in. It has a combustion engine. Now we have a rough estimation of
absolutely, but I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
I'm going to stop you right there, because I'm going to define exactly that, and I'm going to turn around. There's a car right there, and you're going to turn around and say that's not my definition of a car, and that's what I'm trying to say. You also need to commit.
We're not discussing my definition of a God, because I don't have a definition of a God. What I'm trying to figure out is, can I accept your claim? And your claim should be addressing a specific God. And as long as you don't share, as long as you don't share with me what this specific God is, what attributes does he have, I can't judge if your evidence is good.
Let's give this a go. Let's give this a go.
Okay.
Let's give this a go. But I'm going to come back to this point. I'm going to come back to this point in a few minutes, because, like I said, you're asking me to show my hand, but I also want a commitment from you. But let's give this a go.
You still let's
give this a go. No. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but you need to understand what I'm saying in a second.
No, you don't. You still
I absolutely do.
You still think this is about winning and losing, and it's not.
Let's give this a go, Peter. I'm going to give you the definition. The definition of God is an external source of power, not within the creation itself. So if something is inside the creation, or something that is tangible, God is not inside that. God is an external quantity, above and beyond what we're seeing, what the tangible that we're seeing. This God needs to be an uncreated creator. It must be that way, and it's something that will eventually come around to convince you about as well. It's got to be an uncreated creator. It's an external trigger to what we're seeing around us. It's got to be a conscious being to create a conscious being. And the final thing is, we've got a whole bunch of names and attributes. And the one thing that I'd like to get across to yourself and all your followers is that people will use the argument, oh, if God is good, how come this? The Islamic position is that God is not only good, this life is nothing more than the test. So every single day we wake up, there's a scenario that plays out in front of us.
Okay.
So in that scenario, we can grow and learn from that. We can feel pain and emotion, we can laugh and we can cry. So when something bad happens, poverty happens, we actually look at the situation and realize there's actually two paths that we can take: the choice that we've been given and the intelligence that we've been given. So these concepts and aspects that didn't just evolve and create, some chemical reaction in our brains to be able to choose between A and B. When we look at a situation where there's poverty and we look at our pockets that are lined up with money, we have to now make a choice. Do we share that with that other person, or do we watch them die and let it go? And that's one, the purpose of life, and two.
But now you're talking about people and no longer about a God.
No. I'm just addressing a point that, just because I know every one of your followers, including yourself, are probably thinking, but if there is a God, I'm just saying that God is not necessarily always going to pave the way with golden, with flowers for you.
Okay.
It's a case where you may experience the good, you may experience the bad.
I do have one question.
Sure.
You said God is outside the creation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So that means he has no influence inside creation.
Why would you assume that?
Because if he's outside, he can't influence inside. If he
Why
can influence inside, he's also inside creation because he manifests there.
No, Peter, this is again irrational. You can create a programming code. You don't actually have to go into the code to influence it. It's absolutely irrational. This is a typical atheist argument. You don't need to go into code of software to influence the software, Peter.
No, but
you can watch it from the outside. You can watch it execute.
But the reality we live in.
I'm a software engineer. I'm not inside the code.
I know.
I can guarantee you I'm not inside a code.
No. But here's the thing. The reality we are in is not a computer game. And if it is, you'll have to demonstrate that. If it's all done by coding, as you say, you'll have to demonstrate that it's done by coding.
Hang on. Every single thing in this universe is abiding by laws that you call laws of nature. And if you can replace that word with laws of God, it means absolutely the same thing. Every single thing is cyclical that we see around us.
Okay,
it comes in seasonal fluctuation. There's laws. But if you're talking about coding, that's it. You can see the cyclical nature, you can see the pattern, you can see the repetition, you can see everything happening in absolute harmony to a fine-tuned nature. Okay. So if you want to talk about coding,
now listen to me.
We can absolutely see coding.
You said everything obeys the laws of nature. There are a few more laws, but let's stick to that. If we already know that it obeys the laws of nature, what use do we have by sticking another term on it? Because it's just renaming something.
Good question. No, very good question. Very good question. Now I'm going to turn the tables now, because the term that I just touched on there, laws of nature, and I actually said it's synonymous with the laws of God. Let's turn the tables a little bit, because no atheist in the history of man.
No. You're making a claim, and I want to know why. Why is it the same, and how did you determine?
I'm going to answer that.
And how did you determine it was?
Peter, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to answer that because you've jumped now from definition of God into the laws of nature, and you've jumped into a few areas. So I'm going to stop you now, and I'm going to reverse the tables a little bit. I'm going to answer the question.
No, I'm responding to what
I'm going to answer the question. I promise. I need a chance to also ask questions as well, Peter, because this is not a one-sided debate.
No, it isn't.
So we're talking about the laws of nature, and you're saying that, well, how can I automatically replace the word God with nature? Absolutely fine with that. So can I just confirm your position here? That if there was, in the absence of God, you've decided to adopt natural selection and evolution as potential replacements for the process that is guided by, that we say God guided.
No.
Is that a fair statement?
No.
So can I get your view on, in the absence of God, what guided the evolution?
Evolution is a process, is a natural process that has been observed.
Yes, you've used the word nature. But Peter, you've used the word nature just there, just once, just to pick on that. So go on.
Can I finish?
Yes.
Because you say yes, and I wasn't even nearly done explaining.
No, no, no. I just said you used the word nature in there. Just wanted to point that out because I'm going to come back to that point in a second. Go on.
Evolution, I didn't use the word nature. Evolution is a natural process that
Yep.
has been
Yep.
that has been detected, that has been observed, that has been repeated, that it has been observed in laboratory conditions and
Yep.
in
Yep.
nature. So we know now that it's a fact. It has predictable capabilities, so it can point us to what we're looking for. One
Yep.
of the best examples I think you might know is Tiktaalik, because Tiktaalik was predicted before it was found. It was predicted where it should be found, in which layer it should be found, and what it roughly should look like. And when they started digging at the place where evolution predicted it should be found, which was in Canada, they actually
It
found
was
the
right there.
fossil.
Yep.
Sorry? So
Okay. Yep.
In all of this, there is no evidence of any outside interference. So there's also no reason to look for what is causing the outside interference,
So
because we don't see it.
that's a wild conclusion that you've just drawn, because like I said, you use the word natural, which is coming from the word nature, which means that within nature there's a force that is interacting with these particles that allows it to slowly
No.
Go on.
No. Evolution
What is
works.
it then?
Evolution works because there are several forces working on it, and we
Correct.
have defined those. We know what those forces
Yep.
are, and we know
You just repeated exactly what I said there, Peter.
and we know what causes it.
Yep. Absolutely. Because I'm going to ask you to name those forces in a second. So you've just repeated exactly what I said, and you can go back and hear the recording. Particles are influenced by natural forces. That's exactly what I said.
No, not particles.
Over time.
I never used the word particles.
It's semantics.
I don't even know what particles are in the theory of evolution.
Okay.
What
Again, you're jumping around.
No, I'm not jumping around. You're using the word particles. So I want to know what you mean by particles.
Dispute to the word saying for the human being, any entity for that matter, form that we're seeing today starts off as something very, very small, and over time, natural forces, nature, and forces
you're breaking
interact.
You're breaking up terribly. I don't know if that's the internet connection, but you're breaking up terribly.
I'm still here. I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, sound is back now.
Okay, so I'm going to rephrase just so I just want you to again commit to a position or is interact over time and slowly evolving.
You're sorry, Abs, you're still breaking up. I'm not trying to deflect in any way, but I can't hear what you're saying. Some people in the chat are saying he sounds like.
I can hear you perfectly, and I'm not parked. I'm parked on the side. I'm parked on the side of the road. I'm not moving at all. So it's definitely not me. I'm in a strong Wi-Fi area.
And now you're completely clear again. I have no clue what's happening. So let's try again.
I'm going to try more time.
I'm only saying this because I do want to hear what you are saying, and I couldn't hear you.
No, absolutely, because see, again, at the start, I want to get to your position. I want to unravel what that is. So if evolution on an entity, a very small thing, is evolution is a process where natural forces, so forces from nature, interact with that thing over time And
No.
slowly but surely.
No. No.
Go on. You actually disagree with 99% of atheists that I've spoken to. But again, I want you to commit to a position.
I
What did I say that was wrong?
I couldn't care less if I disagree with atheists. What you're
that's fine. I just want you to commit to a position. That's all. I'm just trying to get to your position. That's all. So
Okay,
what did I say that was wrong that was there?
Everything. Evolution.
That's fine. I want to hear your position.
I'll tell you what scientists have as the definition of the theory of evolution.
I'd rather your definition. That's fine. I'll take what you say, because like you said, if I can't.
I'm going by the correct definition. I've spoken to a couple of people in the field. One of them was P.Z. Myers.
Yep.
I don't know if you're
Yep.
familiar with him.
I absolutely know who P.Z. Myers is.
Okay, so
absolutely do. Yep.
In short, evolution is the change of allele frequencies in a population over time. So it's not on.
You said exactly the same thing that I just said, but you just added the word allele frequency, Peter. You said nothing different. You're just really trying to slow this conversation down for absolutely no reason. No. I don't disagree with anything you said.
No, because you were talking about individual.
It's the allele frequency.
Individuals, and it's not acting on individuals.
I didn't mention the word individuals. I said a thing. I said a thing. I didn't say individuals. I'm just,
a thing.
That's fine.
A thing is an individual. It's not a thing.
Okay, let me start again one more time. But you're saying exactly the same thing I'm saying. A population of things is influenced by natural forces over time in order for them to appear in the current state population. Have I said anything wrong there?
Yeah, almost everything. It's a change.
So over time, you have one.
It's the change in allele frequencies in a population.
You just added the word allele frequency, Peter. You didn't say. You didn't. Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to accept that.
I said that the first time, and you can listen back to this.
I'm happy to accept that. Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to accept that, because that's not where I'm heading with this. So let's zoom into this population. Okay, on day 0 of this population set.
There is no day 0.
It had a brain, or it did have a day 0. There has to be a day 0.
No.
There has to be a day 0. We know there's an inception to this universe, Peter. You can't deny that. There has to be a day 0.
Now you're jumping from evolution to abiogenesis, which is
no, I'm not jumping to abiogenesis. No, it's this universe has a starting point. We know that for a fact now, Peter. If you're denying that, there's absolutely no point in this discussion.
Now you're jumping to cosmology.
Abiogenesis is not talking about. No. I'm just talking about day 0. Are you saying they existed since eternity?
You're moving. You keep moving the goalpost. What are we discussing?
What are we not at all.
What are we discussing?
I'm just trying to get to the definition of nature. I'm just trying to get to the definition of nature. If you're saying that the particles have existed since eternity, you're going against fundamental scientific principles that I can't. Well, there's no point in having this discussion anymore. Because it seems like you're moving the goalpost.
You don't have a clue what the theory of evolution is, because the theory of
absolutely do.
The theory of evolution starts after life arises. It doesn't address.
Yes, so life arises.
It doesn't address day 0. Yes. It doesn't address cosmology. Okay. It doesn't address the Big Bang. It doesn't address the Big Bang theory. It's
absolutely fine. Day 0 plus 1. Day 0 plus 1. Life has started. I don't care about prior to that. On day 0 plus 1, did that entity have a brain? Or the population, did it have a brain?
No.
At some point in time, the earliest remnants of a brain began appearing. Okay? Yeah. So over time, change happens to that. And whiz bang, a billion years later, we've got superhuman brains that we're seeing today across an entire population. Okay? Now, my question to you, these forces that are interacting, created memory banks. They created memory. They created billions of neurons to connect. No, Peter.
Everything wrong, because we don't have superhuman brains.
Okay, that's fine. We've got subhuman brain. That's fine. It's not the point. What I'm saying is the brains that we have today have ability to store data, to retrieve and index data. 1 billion neurons connecting every single aspect of our system together. Now, I want you to tell me this natural force, this force of nature, I want you to define what that is. And don't tell me trees and shrubs and gravity and wind. I want to know specifically which force is able to create the ability to store and index data.
Evolution.
And that's where atheists fall apart.
Evolution.
Oh, evolution is a process, and yet exactly what you just said. It's not a force. Come on, Peter.
It is.
I want you to eat your words now and go back. No, it's not a force. It's a process. You just said that.
Yes.
And no atheist can stand up and defend this because you're talking about God and nature, and they can't be synonymous. I want you to define nature now. You can't.
Yes, I just told you. And there are.
Go for it.
And there are several.
Go for it. There's an audience now, and I want you to define nature to this audience. I want you to define nature.
There are several things. If you would let me speak, I could. And if you stop.
Sure. The stage is yours. I'm not going to interrupt anymore.
Okay. So, evolution happens because you could call them forces. I wouldn't.
Yep.
There are several factors.
Interactions.
There are several factors that make evolution happen, and the first one is that cells are not correct copies. There's mutation. That would be the first one.
Correct.
And then over time, you have. I'll have to start at the start, I think. But
by all means, take your time and go back to the very beginning, because I've spoken to guys who I assume are much smarter than you, and guys who are not as smart as you, and they could not answer these questions.
At the very beginning, and I'll skip abiogenesis. We start out with one-celled organisms. By mutation, we got two-celled organisms, three-celled organisms, which at this moment are still present. So there are still organisms that small. It's not completely sure how we ended up with multi-celled organisms. There are a couple of explanations. One is that it just kept adding cells to be one organism. There's also and those are also still present. One-celled organisms that form a colony in which parts of the colony have different tasks, and there could have been a mutation that have led to multicellular organisms with let's say rudimentary organs. Over time,
and notice this stuff is all happening. So notice, but these tasks and these mutations are all happening for no apparent reason. But I'm going to bypass all of that because I'm going to let you keep speaking.
No. Then you didn't listen. They happen for a clearly apparent reason. For a clearly apparent reason. The reason is being better equipped for survival. Those that are better equipped survive, and that doesn't mean survival of the fittest. It means survival of those who can adapt to their particular niche at that point in time.
Keep going. So, that's fine, because I just want to see where this goes on.
And later on, a lot of more factors joined in. We have sexual selection. We have diseases that come up that are going to play a part. We have a food chain, a changing food chain that comes into play. So there are a lot of factors driving evolution, and we as humans figured it out without knowing exactly what it is, by creating, as it were, our food and particular animals. The banana is a good one to explain, because the bananas that we eat are a human creature. They don't appear in nature. They are a human-created plant. We have domesticated dogs. We have domesticated cows. That's where
Peter, I'm going to cut you. Peter, I'm going to cut you. You're not answering the question at all.
Okay. What am I not answering?
Because I accepted all that. I jumped all of that, which is fine. But my specific question to you, I'm happy to accept everything that you've said. You've just repeated the steps of a process, which is absolutely fine. No one's disputing that you didn't follow those steps to make a cake. I'm asking what the forces were.
I just explained to you.
What the forces were. No, you didn't. You explained that things happened and other. No. The recording is all there for you. You didn't mention a single force. Mutations happen.
Yes.
And adaptation happens because of environmental forces. That's absolutely fine. Again, the word environment.
Life is actually no more. Life is actually.
The recording is there for you, Peter. The recording is right there for you to listen. You didn't mention a single force, and you just repeated steps in a process.
No, then you didn't listen.
It's there for you to listen. I'm taking notes here, Peter. It's there for you to listen. What I'm asking you specifically is the difference between Islam and atheism to a large extent. In the Quran, it actually says that God is the one that.
The difference between Islam and atheism is only one thing, and that is that
I can accept that
you accept evidence, which for me is not sufficient. And by just claiming,
but that's fine.
I'm going to mute you if you don't let me speak. By just claiming that your God had any influence on evolution, that doesn't
so
mean.
Peter, hang on.
That doesn't mean anything to me. You'll actually have to demonstrate.
Peter, you're threatening to mute me because.
Peter, you don't let me finish, I'm going to mute you. And that's no threat, because I've done it before. I just want to.
That's absolutely fine, because you are now not answering the question, and you're threatening to mute me because you can't answer the question.
I can answer the question.
That's the bottom line, Peter.
But you can let me speak, and I can answer the question. If you don't let me speak, then I can't answer the question, and you are the reason I can't.
And again, the recording will hear otherwise, because you just went on.
You interject some outside force and have no evidence for this outside force, and you're not going to present any evidence for this outside force, is, at least for me, that my position is justified. And you can try and give some evidence for that external force that no one is able to detect. So I'll ask you, what's your evidence for that outside force?
At least agree, and if I want you to be honest now.
You were talking over me. You were talking over me the whole time you were muted. Did you even hear what I? Did you even hear what I said?
I did, Peter.
Okay, so what's your evidence?
Listen to me now.
No.
Now listen to me carefully now. Now listen, I will answer that. I will answer that. I just want you to get to a common ground to me.
We're not going to get anywhere because you're not answering my question, and if you're not honest enough to answer.
Oh, hang on. You didn't answer my question, and now you've jumped back onto me now. And now I'll answer my question. But can we at least agree that you couldn't? I
asked you what your evidence was that an external force.
I shall give it to you.
Okay.
And I shall give it to you. I shall give it to you.
Without giving me the runaround.
No. So can you at least acknowledge that you didn't answer my question then? You didn't answer my question. Now you're pinning it back onto me that I'm deflecting.
I'm not going to answer anything. I asked you a specific question. What's your evidence? What's your evidence of an outside force acting on evolution?
It's recorded. It's recorded that you didn't state a single force to describe how billions of neurons can connect the entire human system, making a self-healing. No, you're not a single force. Not a single force. I've taken my.
I offered you natural selection. I offered you sexual selection. I offered you mutations, and you can laugh because I've listed a couple of.
So hang on. So you've listed a couple of things. So sexual, mutations and natural selections from nature. It's a very word that I'm asking you to define.
I never said sexual mutations. Stop twisting my words.
Did you not just? What did you say then?
See, that's your problem. You don't listen. And if you don't listen,
no,
you
because
can't respond honest. And you'll have to make up. And you'll have to make
you're
up,
defining.
Which is what you're doing now.
I didn't say a single thing. But hang on, Peter. I'm asking you to define nature, and your answer was it's a natural selection. You use the same word in the definition itself. So now my question to you is. But my question to you now.
I never made that claim, and you can keep twisting my words.
But it's the same. It's in the word. Natural is of nature. It's the same word, Peter.
It's not what
now I'm asking you a question now. But let me ask you a question now, Peter. The force that created 1 billion neurons to allow us to store data is none of those three things that you've mentioned. It's none of those three things. It doesn't just happen, Peter. Now you're asking me for evidence when you've waffled your way to get to the point where it just happens.
What's your evidence for that claim?
Now, no. Let me get that now. I just want you to get to a common position now. The fact that you can't respond to that, does that not indicate that nature?
That's the second claim you make and you run away from. I'll just note it.
What claim?
Because
what claim? Now, hang on. You've asked me a barrage of questions about my definition of God and everything. Now I'm asking you to define nature, which is your God, and you can't answer that.
You refuse to give.
You're asking me to define my God, but you
refuse to give.
No, because I'm not going to show all my cards.
I'm going to mute you again.
No, by all means.
Yes. You refuse to offer evidence for this so-called God that interfered with evolution. Now you refuse to offer any evidence for another claim you have made. That's a second one. And when I take you off of mute, we're going to go back to the first claim you made, which was that an outside force is acting on evolution. And I want your evidence for that outside force that is acting on evolution. And you still talked over me while you were on mute, and you still haven't listened, and you have no clue what I said. Correct?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What was the question I asked while you were on mute?
Peter, you're not my teacher, just so you know. And I'm not obliged to answer your questions, but you can waffle through my questions, and then when you don't answer, you just turn it back onto me.
Okay, so there is no outside force.
I'm happy for you to disconnect me.
Evolution, because you can't offer any evidence for said force working on evolution.
Because hang on, Peter, hang on.
Well, I'm not letting
now, can you just listen to me for a second now?
Deflect from this one.
But you've deflected, and you're asking me not to deflect. Peter, this is bullshit.
That's the claim you made, and
This is absolute bullshit, Peter. You've deflected your answer. You've deflected your answer. Now you're saying I'm deflecting.
No.
You asked me to define. No, listen to me, Peter. Peter, just listen to me. Just listen. You're not listening. You've asked me to define my God, and I listed specifically what that God needs to look like. Then I've turned around and said, in the absence of God, you said nature is the plausible response. I asked you to define nature. You waffled on talking about how cells multiply and mutate.
No,
that none of those are forces.
You asked me to define evolution, which I did.
No, I didn't ask you to define evolution. You can listen to the recording. I asked you to define what the forces are that are of natural in nature. And you can go back and listen to my recording.
Those are
now, my question to you, I'm okay.
I answered that evolution is what
evolution is not a force, Peter. We're back to square one. Evolution is not a force, it's a process. I make a cake. I need to do 1, then step 2, then step 3. None of those are forces. Force is what causes the single organism that we're seeing now. It needs to interact with some sort of force in order to move and accelerate and progress and adapt.
Do you know what a scientific theory is?
I do.
Okay. Can you give me your definition of a scientific theory?
So we're done with the fact that you can't define what nature is, because that's all I wanted to get to.
Because here's the flaw. You think that evolution is the theory of evolution is a force. It's not.
I didn't. I've been saying that for the past 5 minutes. It's not a force.
And the answer is,
Peter, I've been saying it's not a force.
In the definition, the answer is in the definition of a scientific theory. And you seem to have no clue what that is.
Hang on. You just said evolution is a force. I'm telling you it's not a force. It's a process. I've said this about no less than 10 times now. Listen to the recording. I've got a feeling you're not going to upload this recording.
What is a scientific theory?
Peter.
What's the definition of a scientific theory? Because I think you don't know. Peter. Because you can't state it. So I'm going to guess you don't know. Okay, what's the scientific theory?
That's fine. I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to waffle and deflect just like you've done. I don't need to answer to you, Peter. This is insulting.
If you don't need to
because
answer,
hang on,
then I'm justified
Peter,
in thinking
hang on. You just said right now. You just said right now to stop me to say that evolution is not a force.
Do you know that?
Go back to the recording.
Do you know that the forces are included in?
Go back to the recording and see how many times I told you it is not a force.
Do you know that the forces are included in the theory? Clear yes or no?
Absolutely, they're included, but they're not. Yes, they are. There has to be force, and I've been telling you that from the very beginning.
I'm not.
And now you're saying it's of natural in nature.
I'm not asking if there has to be a force. I'm asking you if you are aware that the forces are included in the theory. Because that's what a theory is.
Yes.
Okay, what are the forces that are included?
Where are you heading with this?
I'm just trying to figure out if you even have the faintest clue of what the theory of evolution actually is.
Okay, so this is a test now.
I want to know if you even have a clue what a scientific theory is, because
I'm sitting on my laptop.
I think you have.
I'm sitting here. I can Google it right now and give you the answer. I can Google it right now and tell you and pretend like I've got the answer, Peter. This is absolutely insulting.
Well, you can Google it.
I can Google this right now. It's right here in front of me. I can absolutely Google it. But Peter, just so you know, that I'm going to put words in your mouth because you're refusing to do it. The forces of evolution that I'm asking you to define what they are. Now you're turning this around to me that I don't get it. I'm asking you, the fact that we humans... No, Peter, let's just listen for a second. Peter, please.
You the forces.
Please.
I gave
you you didn't. No, you didn't. You asked me to define my God. I asked you to define yours. You deflected completely. And now you're trying to convince me that I said that evolution is not is a force. I'm telling you it's not. Evolution is a process that interacts, forces interact with it. Now I'm asking you the question. We have memory. We have intelligence. We are self-healing. We are self-replicating. 1 billion neurons connect. The force required to create a human memory, the ability to store and index data, is not electromagnetism. It's not asexual. It's not natural, quote unquote, because we don't know what that is. It's not gravity. It's not winds and trees. It's none of those things.
Can you demonstrate any of those claims?
Are you saying it is one of those things?
Do you have evidence that backs up these silly claims?
So gravity caused billions of neurons to connect?
It's your.
Was it wind?
It's your claim.
Are you standing here telling me that gravity caused billions of neurons to connect?
If you make a claim, if you're at your laptop, Google the burden of proof. If you make a claim,
absolutely. But the burden of proof is also on you. The burden of proof is also on you. But billions of neurons, self-replicating, self-healing, interconnected system. And you can't tell me what the forces are, because I'm telling you the force is external to the system. And that's absolutely plausible. You're saying no, that you can't see evidence that it's external to the system. That's evidence. That's evidence, Peter. You can't define nature. You can't even tell me what the forces are.
We have the evidence in scientific papers, and I can give
you have evidence. No, I've read them all. Absolutely send me the links. I've read them all, Peter. And what they say is exactly what you just said.
You've read every scientific paper on
Not every single one of them, but I speak to people like you quite a lot. They'll tell me this happens and then vague a few more points. Then when I ask them, that's fine. It's like me telling you I've jumped from here to Denmark
There's,
in
there,
you know,
there's not,
I'm in Sydney today and I'm in
there,
Denmark tomorrow. The first question
there's,
you're going to ask is, how did I get there? And if I say, oh, forces came and it was natural that took me over there,
can I
that's
ask you,
bullshit, because that's not the...
can I ask you a simple question?
Absolutely.
We started this discussion when you said you had evidence for a God. So far, all you do is attack a position you don't hold. Is that
No, hang
because
on. No, hang on.
is that because you
No,
don't have
hang on.
evidence for a God?
No, I do. But remember from the very beginning, I
So
told you what was going to happen.
when are we
No,
going
hang
to
on, Peter.
get to any evidence of a God?
So hang on. So you just want to attack me, but I'm not allowed to ask you questions. You asked me what's the definition of God. I told you it's external,
I
and I
think
listed everything.
for the most part I answered your questions.
No,
I
you
think
didn't. It's on
I
the
think
video. No, you didn't. You didn't mention a single force. You did not mention a single force. I wrote
we're
down the notes as you were
50
talking. You didn't.
we are 50 minutes in the conversation, and you
Yep.
haven't
Yep.
offered one single piece of evidence
Because
for a
it's not a
God.
one-way discussion, Peter. It's not a one-way
No,
discussion.
it's going to be, because I have been talking about evolution for 50 minutes. So
Yes, you have.
we're going to address evidence for God for 50 minutes. How's
No,
that?
no, no. We're not going to do that, because you asked me to define God and I have. Then I asked you
Well,
to define nature and you couldn't.
we're still on my
And
channel,
you
so
couldn't. I
I
just want you
still
to
can
acknowledge that you
make
can't define nature.
I can
I just
still
want you to
make the
acknowledge that.
rules. I can still make the
That's fine.
rules.
And I don't have to listen to that, because at the end of the day, the recording is there that you couldn't define the force of nature. Simple as that.
So you're running away, and you're not
No, I'm
going
not
to
running away.
present any evidence for your
Well,
God.
until you acknowledge that you couldn't define what the force of nature was. Until you can define that, then I'm happy to proceed. Until you acknowledge that. Either define the forces of nature,
I
or you
have.
acknowledge that you can't. No, you didn't. That's fine then. I'm not going to accept that as an answer, because you waffle through to talk about things that
Great.
replicate and tasks that get created
Great.
and
Don't accept
asexual.
it. Don't accept it. We're going to get to evidence for God. What's your evidence for God?
No, there's no point, because you're not acknowledging this is not a fair debate. The evidence of God is off the back of the fact that interactions that you're talking about that you can't define are external to that process, Peter. You
I love
can't
it.
list a single internal process.
I love it how the people in the chat are agreeing with me.
Of course they're going to agree with you. They're all atheists. They're
Yeah.
not going to turn around and say, hang on, that Muslim just absolutely kicked my ass. They're not exactly going to say that, Peter. And
Well,
not one of them can stand up and actually
you,
help you and tell you what those forces are. Tell them to type what those forces are. I'm happy to accept wind, nature, plants. Tell me what they are that cause the billion neurons to connect in the human system, Peter. You can't answer that.
we're not going to address
You can't. And none of
any
them
of it
can.
anymore,
And none of them can. Let's not kid ourselves.
because we started this because you had evidence for a God, and you.
Oh, but that's fine. But I don't report to you. Just to remember that. I don't report to you. The fact that I'm
No.
telling you that God needs to be external to the system, I'm demonstrating the fact that you can't even list what those forces are. And my very definition of God was that it was an external force. And
Great.
mine is consistent with what we're seeing. Yours is not consistent. A shrub and a plant and wind does not connect neurons.
What's your evidence this external force even exists?
Hang on, Peter. Am I talking to myself here? Am I talking to myself here? The universe had a trigger. The universe had a trigger that you don't know what that is.
What's your evidence for the universe having a trigger?
So nothing triggered the universe into a fine-tuned explosion. From a fine-tuned into a fine-tuned order. Nothing triggered it.
Did I make that claim? You made a positive claim.
No, you said what the evidence is for. You said what the evidence is for a trigger. Is nothing evidence? It must have a trigger, Peter. I'm allowed to make claims like that. It must have a trigger. Because nothing is not an answer.
What makes you think so?
It's either nothing or something, Peter. It's very simple. It's binary. It's binary.
Yeah. So
is there a third option? Ask your followers out there, is there a third option out of nothing and something?
I'm not proposing an option. I'm asking you what your evidence is for the claim you just made.
Because nothing cannot trigger something into existence. Is that a fair statement?
How do you know this?
Okay, so nothing has triggered things into existence in the past, and have we got evidence for that?
No,
empirically, logically, scientifically.
I'm asking you how you know this.
Because empirically, logically, and scientifically, Peter, we have evidence to suggest that nothing cannot trigger anything.
Do you have
It's
an
got to be an
example?
external force.
Do you have an example?
A box is on a table, Peter. It can't move 1 centimeter to the left unless you have a force of some sort
Is a
moving
box
it to the left.
nothing?
External.
Is a box
No, I'm
nothing?
talking about the trigger, Peter. Peter, the trigger.
What
The
trigger?
trigger.
What trigger?
To move that box to the left 1 centimeter, you need a force. And do you not see how stupid this conversation has become? I'm sitting there trying to convince you that.
Because you're
No,
deflecting and
because
you're giving me the
no, I'm not
runaround.
deflecting. You asked me for an evidence of an external force.
You are making a
No.
positive claim, therefore
Can
you have the burden of proof.
Can I ask you? So I'm not allowed to say anything at all. You're allowed to say nothing is a potential option of being an external trigger to this universe.
You're allowed to.
You're asking me for evidence of nothing.
You're allowed to back up your claim, and
I am absolutely because empirically, scientifically, logically, and
by deflecting and talking over me, that at least gives me the idea that you can't back up your claim. So let's get back to your claim.
You asked me for evidence.
Can you back it up?
Back what up?
Your claim that there has
nothing can't trigger. It can't trigger a movement.
No.
Wow.
Did you make that claim?
So we both agreed that the universe.
Did you make the claim that nothing can trigger the universe? Did you make that claim?
I didn't. I said the opposite, Peter. It's either nothing or something triggered the universe.
Present evidence for your opposite claim.
Okay, and I'm with you now. So empirically, scientifically, logically, through visual evidence, through any mechanism, thought you'd like, there has never been a case in the history of scientific studies.
That's an argument from ignorance fallacy.
Okay, so Peter, nothing triggering the universe is a plausible argument?
No, I didn't make a claim. You made a claim.
Okay, so what's your position on this?
And by saying I have no other explanation, that by definition is an argument from ignorance fallacy.
So nothing is a plausible option, is it?
I didn't say that.
So it's not it's one or the other, Peter. See, this is what I mean.
No, it's
Do you remember the very first comment I made? No, hang on, Peter. The very first comment. No, Peter.
You're making a new
Peter.
It's one or the other.
Peter, stop.
What's your evidence?
Peter, stop.
What's your evidence that there are two options?
I'm gonna jump off the call in exactly 30 seconds.
What's your evidence?
The very first comment I made, Peter, the very first comment on the start of this call I made was atheists cannot be tied down to a position because they will refuse to hold themselves to a position. The very first comment I made. Now you're telling me it could be nothing, and I haven't set a position, and it could be something.
I don't have a position. I didn't make
it.
You
just want to throw rocks at my position, even though you know for a fact that logically, scientifically, it makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
But you're refusing to look in that direction because it doesn't suit you.
It's an argument from ignorance fallacy, and I just.
But it's an argument that scientifically is proven, Peter. You can't move a box to the left 1 centimeter unless there's a force. We know that for a fact.
Since when
the box cannot move?
Since when is a God proven? Because if a God is proven,
that's irrelevant. I didn't mention God. I said that there's a trigger.
Okay.
Now I'm asking you if there's an external force. And we know there's an external force because something triggered the universe. Now you need to ask yourself, what is that external force now, Peter? You must acknowledge there's an external force now.
So it's not a God.
No, Peter, I'm working with you step by step. Didn't you want the evidence? We're getting there. We're getting there. What I'm saying is, you couldn't define nature, I could. You couldn't define nature, and I could define God. We acknowledge that the universe had a starting. We acknowledge that the universe needed the trigger. And now I'm telling you, you must acknowledge now. And now we're isolating the problem.
I still haven't acknowledged that the universe had a
But then you'll never acknowledge anything, Peter. Then go back to the very start.
That's a claim you made, and you can't back up with evidence.
So to summarize, you don't know if it was nothing or something. You don't know what the external force is. You don't know what nature is.
I didn't make a claim yet.
You never will. I've been telling you that from the very beginning. You never will. I know that for a fact about atheists. They never will.
We're addressing your claim, and you're running away from the evidence.
What claim? Hang on, Peter. Hang on. I presented to you, scientifically proven, no box can move to the left 1 centimeter unless there's a force. Can you prove otherwise? Can you prove otherwise?
No.
Would you stand up in the front of a science class and say nothing is a potential option?
I'll agree that the box can't move. Now let's get back
Yes.
to your claim that the universe was caused by an outside force.
Because
Which you still are afraid to address because you know you don't.
I addressed it, Peter. I addressed it. We know for a fact in physical nature.
We know for a fact.
Can you tell me? Hang on. You told me. You told me something.
We know for a fact that the universe is not a box on a table.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And now, you can tell me.
Let's get to the cause of the universe, the outside influence, and what evidence do we have for this outside influence?
Hang on, Peter. No, hang on. Again, I refuse to go into this with you because one, you're not holding a position down.
Because you don't.
No, I do have evidence. We agreed. Oh,
so
well, you don't agree. You don't agree to anything. No, but you don't agree to anything.
Why coward out? Why be a chicken? Why not present your evidence?
I'm being a chicken.
Yes.
I'm being a chicken. Wow.
Yes.
I mentioned one. Hang on. I mentioned one thing. Universe had a starting point. It must have a trigger. You said, "Where's your evidence for that?" I'm saying nothing has never been a trigger in the history of everything that we know.
From ignorance fallacy.
Okay, so nothing is an option then, Peter? And you can't answer that. We're back to square one. So how can I argue with you?
I didn't say that, and I did.
Oh my God!
I did point out that you.
Oh my God! If your followers are honest, every one of them guys, they'll actually hold you up to what you've just said.
I did point out that you nor I have evidence that there are only two options.
Is there a third option that you or any of your followers can mention now? Nothing or something, Peter?
As long as we don't know that there are more options, we cannot pin it down
using empirical evidence.
Only two options. But you made a specific claim there was only one option, an outside influence, and I want to know what your evidence for this.
And again, is. I've told you in kinetic terms, in electromagnetic terms, in any terms that you would like to choose.
Yes.
In any terms, according to scientific principles. Now, I'm starting to doubt that you actually have no scientific principles, Peter. I actually strongly doubt that you have scientific principles.
I'll make you an easy analogy. A stone cannot move in any way, but a car can. And you know why? Because there are two different things. So now we're going to go back to the universe and the starting of the universe, and I want to hear your evidence.
No. Let's talk about the car and the rock, Peter.
No, we're not going to deflect again because that's what you want. Because
you raised the example. No, hang on, Peter. Come on, this is absolute bullshit, Peter.
You cannot back up.
This is absolute bullshit.
Just say I cannot back up my claim, and then
you can't back up your claim, and you're borderline lying now because I'm telling you that we know there's a trigger.
I never made a claim.
Of course, you don't make any claims.
I never made a claim because I.
Of course, you don't make claims. I told you that from the start. You won't make claims. I told you that. Yes. From the very start, I know atheists won't make claims because they're too scared to hold their position. They never will.
I'm not going to make a claim I cannot back up with evidence.
So hang on. So I'd like you to tell your followers unequivocally that the trigger of the universe could be nothing.
And I'm happy.
No. I just want you to. I just wanted to tell you this. The trigger of the universe.
I am happy to say, if you had any sort of manners, we could have a discussion.
Oh no, Peter, because you're trying. Because you want to throw rocks at me, Peter, and I'm not going to throw rocks at you.
I'm happy to say that I don't know how
the
universe came into being.
Perfect. Is an external force a possible option?
I'm even happy to say that science currently doesn't know how the universe came into being because we can't look beyond time, and time started with the Big Bang.
Perfect.
And now I'm talking to this guy from Australia who can look outside time and has clear evidence of what happened.
I didn't say that. I thought you were waiting this entire time for my evidence. Now you're saying I've presented evidence. Clear. I haven't presented anything, Peter.
No.
I thought this entire thing was I haven't presented evidence.
You won't.
Oh, but hang on. It was me telling you.
We could talk for 2 hours, and you still.
Of course we can. Of course you can, because you just want me to talk and throw rocks at me.
Because you don't have any evidence.
Oh, because hang on.
If you had evidence, you would have presented it by now.
Okay, hang on, Peter. Can you let me talk and you just answer my questions now?
I'll talk over you as much as you talk over me.
Absolutely fine, because I deserve that. I promise I do. I truly mean that, because it is very frustrating what you're doing at the moment, because you want to throw rocks at me, but when it comes to your position, you can waffle answers through and then say I'm deflecting.
I don't want to throw rocks. I want to have a decent conversation, and you're not able.
We can, but you're insulting me because you can waffle your way through answers.
I am insulting you because you're talking over me. You're dodging the question. You don't present
I'm dodging the questions.
evidence,
wow.
And you make one claim after another without backing.
Wow. You asked me to define God, and I did. I asked you to define nature, and you couldn't, firstly. And then you waffled your way to saying I presented forces and presenting evolution as a force, and I kept telling you it's not a force.
I still think that me defining nature
that's fine. And it's on the recording. And it's on the recording.
To do with you claiming that Allah exists.
It does, because Peter, what I'm saying is God is an external force. You're trying to say that environmental forces are what caused the human to be what we are today. And I'm telling you, it's absolutely impossible. It's a rubbish theory.
Yes.
Evolution works, absolutely. But the forces that interact with evolution is what I'm talking about.
Over 99% of the scientific community disagrees with you.
Hang on. With what? Sorry.
And since everything we have on Earth we owe to the scientific method.
Hang on, Peter. What do you think I disagree with? I didn't disagree with evolution.
Every piece of knowledge we have, we owe to the scientific method. So I'm going with the people that have given acknowledge that knowledge, and I'm not going to believe some guy from Australia who is dodging the burden of proof.
I'm with you. Can you at least acknowledge that the scientific methods were actually created by Muslims, or a large proportion of them? Can you at least give me that? So we're not against the scientific methods, and we're not actually against.
Can I honestly address that without any interruptions?
Can I rephrase the question I don't want to?
Can I honestly address that question?
Yeah, you can, but can I just rephrase the question a little bit?
No. I'll go with the question.
Because I said it wrong. I said it wrong. I said it wrong.
I'll go with.
I said it wrong.
No, I'll go.
I said it wrong. I just want to tone it down.
I'll go with the statement you just made, and that is that I acknowledge that a lot of the science has come from Muslim scientists.
Yep.
And the reason why I can acknowledge this is because we have clear evidence of that.
Perfect.
For example, most of the stars in the beginning were named in Arabic because most of the scientists were Muslims, were Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
We can also look at science and find a clear point in time where science stopped coming from Muslim countries, and that is
correct.
And that is when Islam took over as being the major force in the country, and because of that we can see that.
Wow.
And it's not.
I'm not even going to refute that.
Okay, listen. It's not only you, because we actually see that happening in the USA today, because of Christians halting science.
Let's drop that. Let's drop that point. That's not the point of the discussion. I can refute this from now till tomorrow, but it's not the point of the discussion. What I'm trying to say is we're not against the scientific method, is what I'm saying.
And
what I'm saying is I'm not against evolution either.
And it's still irrelevant because 99% of scientists agree with the evidence that we have. So now let's get back. Let's get back.
And I agree with 90% of. I agree with those 95% of scientists.
Evidence. So to your evidence for this external force that caused the universe in coming into being. What's that
Okay,
evidence?
Peter, and I'm telling you, I don't disagree with 95% of the scientists either. What I am telling you that whenever I speak to people like you who seem very intelligent, and I
We're
ask them
not
to
going to
list those
address the
forces,
evidence.
so I have to answer your questions, but you don't. You can dodge mine, yeah? And
We're
I ask for those
we're 1
forces, and
hour.
they waffle exactly like you.
We're 1 hour and 10
I've got to
minutes
go.
in,
I've got to
and
go. To be honest, Peter,
we started out asking you for evidence for your God, and you have still presented.
No, you asked me to define my God, and I asked you to define your position, and you refused to.
No, I said you have to define your God in order for me
Look, Peter, I'm going to go. I hope you post this.
To judge your evidence.
I hope you publish this. I hope you publish this because
running away.
No, I'm not running away. No, I'm not running away, Peter. Because I know your games. I know your games, Peter. Because people and your followers.
You don't have a single piece of evidence.
I disagree completely because, to be honest, from where I'm sitting, is you can answer anything I asked. That's from where I'm sitting, and the video will suggest. And my point at the very beginning that you won't stick to a position.
I have answered every single question for over an hour.
You did.
I just asked you one.
Yep.
Give me one piece of evidence for God.
I know, because the reason why I honed in because you didn't answer the question, and you can listen to it.
You are running away.
I'm not running away. I just want you to. No.
So
I'm not. I refuse to let you dictate this debate.
What they started out with on Twitter was who would chicken out and who would not present evidence. And I did,
and I sincerely hope
you did.
I sincerely hope you post this on for your followers. I absolutely did, because look, to be honest, Peter, I refuse to discuss something where someone can waffle answer, but you demand answers from me.
I don't demand. You came on saying that you had evidence for a God.
But you asked me to define my God, and my very first question is, let's define the parameters of what we're debating, because this was always going to happen. You refused to define, and I showed you the fact that no matter what I present, you're going to say it's not evidence.
And what parameters did we?
And I tell you why.
And what parameters?
You didn't define it. That's the point. Listen to it. Listen to it, Peter. You didn't define it. You said.
We spent an hour defining the theory of evolution. We haven't.
No, we spent an hour.
A word about this God that you have so poorly defined.
Peter,
you weren't even.
Peter,
you didn't even have the courage to name this God. You didn't even have the courage.
Because is it relevant? Is it relevant, Peter?
Yes.
It is. Well,
yes.
Oh my God.
Because you have to be specific in your claim. If you are going to.
Oh my God, you have to be specific. Yes. The irony of that comment, Peter. The irony of that comment. You have to be specific. Wow. Yes. I asked you to name me the force that was able to create human memory, store and index data, and you said,
"What does that have?
This happens, and natural process happens."
What does that?
Because you can't define nature and you can't define the force. And when I say it's external,
what does that have to do with you dodging?
Everything, Peter. Everything.
Giving evidence.
Peter, everything. It's my evidence. It's the crux of my evidence. But the fact that you can't even acknowledge that, there's no point in me continuing. Because what I am saying to you is there are forces that are of natural in nature, and we know exactly what they are. And none of those forces are attributable to the human memory function.
Can we make this a lot easier? Let's pretend that the theory of evolution is completely false. Just for argument.
When did I say that, Peter? I've said it. No, hang on. Can you ask your followers? I can't see the chat. I can't see the chat. Can you ask your followers how many times I said that I don't disagree with the process of evolution?
I said let's pretend for the argument.
Pretend something that both you and I both agree on. Why would we pretend that, Peter?
We can finally stop talking about it and get to your evidence of God.
Hang on, you're missing the point. I ask your followers, please ask them. Followers, can you tell Peter how many times I've said I don't disagree with the concept of evolution?
Anyone, I'm lying on my couch.
Of course you're not going to ask.
With my eyes
Of course you're not going to ask, Peter. It doesn't suit you to ask.
I'm enjoying you running around and trying to dodge.
I'm saying exactly the same thing about you. I'm saying exactly the same thing about you, that you don't want to define it. What I'm saying to you, Peter, I'm going to say it one more time. And I promise, if we get into an argument, I'm just going to hang up on this call, and I'm the chicken. I ran away.
Yeah,
You asked me to
are.
define God, and the crux of my, yeah, absolutely. The crux of my definition was it's an external force outside of the creation. Then I asked you to turn around and say, define nature.
What evidence
The
do
fact
you
that
have?
none of these
What
forces,
evidence do you have such a force exists?
and I'm telling you why. And I'm telling you why two things I told you.
Not
One,
why,
the fact that none of the forces,
not why I asked you what
Peter,
evidence do you have that such a force
okay,
exists?
yep. And I'm telling you,
I'm not
the
asking
forces that are
why. I'm not
attributable,
asking why it exists. I'm not asking why it would be necessary to exist. I ask you what
yep,
evidence the force exists.
Peter,
That's a different question.
for a box to move left,
You're
yep,
smart
for a
enough.
box to move left 1 centimeter,
You're smart enough
yes,
to answer a simple
for
question
Peter,
like that, right?
Peter, listen, for a box to move left, you don't need to
I don't.
convince me that a force moved that left.
I'm not talking about a box.
Do
I
you
want
get this point? But do you get this point?
address the point.
But do you get this point? No,
What
hang on. No, I am addressing it because it's
evidence do
Peter, good
you
line.
have that a force outside of nature exists?
And I'm telling you, but you keep jumping in. You want to hear one thing and one thing only.
No, I'm not going to talk boxes
For a box
anymore,
to
and I'm not going to let you deflect.
No, we are.
Because you want to
I'm not deflecting, Peter.
Because this can't happen,
okay,
therefore that
okay.
can happen.
And no, of course it can't.
That's
hang on, Peter.
How the burden of proof works. That's how
Peter,
children.
stop for a second, please. This is absolutely embarrassing. This is absolutely embarrassing for you, Peter. Okay, Peter. Let me talk about children now. We mentioned, you asked me to begin with my evidence, and I told you that the universe had a trigger. I said it was either nothing or something, and your response was, we don't know it either.
You're talking about boxes on.
And this is the childish nature of atheism. This is the childish nature of atheism. It's either nothing or something, but we don't know if it's nothing. Peter, are we seriously having this discussion?
An atheist who has you cornered because you can't answer his question.
Absolutely. Please publish this video because I'd like the masses to listen to this. And from my perspective,
it's already published.
That's fine. Cool. I'm the chicken, just for the record. And please, I urge you to listen to this from the very beginning when you refuse to define anything. You refuse.
You are the loser making claims he can't back up.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely the loser. Just remember, for you to go back and listen to this and see how you waffled your way through the answer and you're calling me a loser. Just so you remember that. Goodbye.
I am, because I'm giving you the chance and you just walked away. So who's the coward now? Because I'm still here. And people can hear I'm still here because the recording is still going on. And I want to thank the people that are watching this live for this painful situation. And I'll have to give Christians one thing. They're better in at least trying to give any evidence. Because so far, every single Muslim has refused to go live on air. Every single Muslim has so far refused to give his evidence, his or her evidence, live in a conversation with me. And now you ran away. So what we're left with is that you make a claim about a God you cannot back up. All you did for, looking at the clock now, an hour and 15 minutes was give me the runaround trying to shoot holes in a theory that has been proven. I'm at a loss for words. You said you had evidence for a God. You came on saying you have evidence for a God, and you have nothing. So at least we found out who the chicken was that ran away. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see if he gets back. I offered him a second talk, so that offer will stay open. And we'll see if he gets back. Thanks guys for listening. Painful, but I still enjoyed it. So See you next time. Bye-bye.